Hello all, welcome to chapter 3. I'm going to be a little transparent and say that I read a little bit ahead, not intentionally, mainly because I thought my mic was on and well, yeah. Oops, let me cap. Anyways, yeah. Let's try this again. So, chapter 3, we get introduced to a little bit of a fun character development with you'll see. But to make it evident that I read ahead, you see, I added Lisa to the list of children, and then her ability, whatever it was, will be described later on too. I didn't finish chapter 3 before realizing my mic was muted, but there's at least 5 parts before another interlude. So for this stream, we'll have 5 parts to chapter 3 and an interlude. So let's just jump right into it now that my mic is not muted. Lovely. Chapter 3, The Denial That Shreds. On the morning after she murdered Detective Miner for the second time, Carolyn became aware of the Oops. There we go. Carolyn became On the morning after she murdered Detective Miner for the second time, Carolyn came awake on the floor of Mrs. McGillicuddy's living room. It was shortly after dawn, as was her habit. She laid very still at first, her eyes closed, careful not to give away the sign that she was unconscious. Morning was always the hardest for her. As far as she knew, no one, not Father, not David, not even Emily, could see into her sleeping mind. So it was only there that she did her real planning. But when she was fresh out of her sleep, it was difficult to keep her truth of her heart from tangling with the lies of her conscious mind, and her fingertips often trembled. She sniffed the air in the room, learning what she could that way. Michael was gone. As they agreed, he had left before sunrise. They would meet later at the Bronze Bull. Most of the others were still there, sleeping. Faintly, from the back room, she caught a whiff of sour sweat, fresh blood. David. Mingled with that, the smell of brown earth and rotten meat. Margaret. Alicia was closer, just back from the far future and still smelling of methane. Mrs. McGillicuddy was making food in the kitchen. Coffee, potatoes, frying in garlic and some kind of sauce. Carolyn opened her eyes, the barest crack. This was American room, still looked alien to her. Half remembered dream in calendar years. Carolyn was something like 30 years old, but calendar years were only part of it. By the time it occurred to her to wonder what her true age was, she could only remember the roughest guess. She understood all languages, past and present, human and beast, real and imagined. She could speak most of them well, though some required special equipment. How many in all? Tens of thousands? Hundreds of thousands? And how long to learn them? Even these days, it still took her most of a week to master a new one. But when she looked in the mirror, she saw a young woman. Father had given her things to improve her memory, to help her mind work more quickly. But it was also true that time worked differently in the library. And Carolyn, more than any of them, had passed her life in there. So the America that had once been her home now felt exotic. The things called a couch, while comfortable enough, was far too tall, much higher than the pillow she was used to. In the corner, was a box called the television, or TV, that could show moving pictures, but you could not step inside or touch things. There were no candles, no oil lamp, and so on. Mrs. McGillicuddy was in the living room, an American who had taken them into her home of her own free will. Well, more or less. Lisa had a chat with her, but the effects of that were only temporary. Also, Jennifer gave her a blue powder that made her less curious about their eccentricities. But it was also true that Mrs. McGillicuddy, a widow who lived alone, liked having the company. They had been there for 6 weeks. By the second night of their banishment from Garrison Oaks, the library, it became clear that whatever it was keeping them from Garrison Oaks wasn't going away. Peter and a couple of others had been grumbling about sleeping rough. Everybody was hungry. They might have gone to one of father's courtiers, but David thought it was unwise. Until we know who is behind this, we keep to ourselves. On the horizon, the light of America glittered. So they set out en masse, walking east down the westbound lane of the Highway 78, a mile or so outside their valley. They walked up a hill, turned into the first neighborhood they found, knocked on the door at random. It was just before midnight. Carolyn stood in front, David towering behind her, spear in hand. Mrs. McGillicuddy, a widow whose only son didn't ever call, came to the door in her housecoat. "Hi," Carolyn said brightly. "We're foreign exchange students. There's been some sort of mix-up with the program. We don't have a place to stay. We're wondering if you might put us up for the night." Carolyn wore the student robe, a gray-green cotton thing along the lines of a kimono with a hood, tied at the waist with a sash. The others were dressed similarly. They did not look like foreign exchange students. "Smile," Carolyn said under her breath in Palapi. They all did. Mrs. McGillicuddy was not reassured. Oh well, Carolyn thought. It was worth a shot. A lot of the cultures had a tradition of sheltering strangers. Evidently not America, though. I think there's a Holiday Inn down the road, dear," Mrs. McGillicuddy said. "On the left?" "Yeah," Carolyn said. "That probably won't work out." Then in Palapi, "Lisa, can you...?" Question mark. Lisa stepped forward and touched Mrs. McGillicuddy on the cheek. The older woman flinched at first, but when Lisa spoke, her face softened. The sound Lisa made weren't in any language that Carolyn knew. If there was any sort of grammar or even a pattern to them, she had never noticed it. Whatever it was outside her catalog, but it worked on the old woman just as it did on all Americans. After a moment, she said, "Of course, dear. Would you please come in?" They did. Even under the effects of Lisa's whatever it was, Mrs. McGillicuddy was cool to them at first. Carolyn could see that she was afraid. She asked a lot of questions and didn't seem satisfied with Carolyn's answer. Then the subject of food came up. "You're hungry?" Mrs. McGillicuddy said. "Really?" "Yes, if it isn't too much trouble, anything you have would be..." "I'll make lasagna," she grinned, perhaps for the first time in years. "No, 2 lasagnas, grown boys. Won't take but a moment." Actually, it was more like a couple of hours. But she also put together something she called amuse-bouche, which meant mouth amusement, in terms Carolyn rather liked. There were bite-sized snacks of cheese, olives, salami, bread fried in oil and garlic, things like that. She had wine as well. Jennifer's silver pipe made a few rounds. By 3 a.m., when the lasagna was ready, they all pleasantly buzzed and laughed, temporarily carefree. There was only one bad moment. David. Done with his olives, went to the counter for more wine. He dipped his finger in the cheese mixture and slurped off a bit of goo. Mrs. McGillicuddy slapped his hand. Everyone froze. Ah, shit, Carolyn thought. This was going so well. David's face clouded. He towered over the old woman. She tilted her head back and met his eyes. But now she understood that they did not speak English. At least not well. She waggled her finger in his face. David's eyes widened. Carolyn looked away, braced herself for blood. Mrs. McGillicuddy pointed at the sink. David looked confused. Everyone was confused, actually, but at least the old woman was still alive. David? Richard said for a, Richard said for a moment. Richard ah, Richard said for a moment. David glared at him. I think she wants you to turn on the tap to wash your hands, he pantomimed doing this. David thought about this for a moment, then nodded. He walked over to the sink, turned on the water. Oh no, Caroline thought, des- despairingly. He's going to drown her in it, boil her, something. But he didn't. Instead, David washed his hand, first letting the clear water rinse off the caked dirt and clotted blood, then giving them a good lather with something called palmolive. Ugh. When he was done with his hands were shiny, clean, halfway to his elbow. He showed them to Mrs. McGillicuddy. You're a good boy, she said in English. What's his name, dear? David, Carolyn said. Her lips felt numb. His name is David. You're a good boy, David. David smiled at her. Then perhaps the most amazing thing Carolyn ever witnessed happened. David mined the Paleolithic depth of his memories and returned with the English phrase, tanks, gamma. Mrs. McGillicuddy grinned. David grinned. Mrs. McGillicuddy presented her cheeks. David, bending almost to the level of his waist, kissed it. Jennifer looked at her little pipe, blinked, looked back up. Are you guys seeing this? Seeing? Yes, Peter said. Mrs. McGillicuddy got a clean spoon, scooped out a bit of the cheese and egg mixture. She fed it to David, then used the spoon to wipe a little dribble off his chin. He rubbed his tummy and made yum noises. Carolyn looked around Mrs. Gillicuddy's kitchen table. All she saw were wide eyes and slack jaws. David filled his wine glass and came back to the table. What? He said, looking at them. Oh, for gosh sakes, you guys always act like I'm some kind of ogre. End of part 1. What a warm-hearted event. Before we enter part 2, I do want to say, let's add another text here. I want to add another text here for trigger warning. We'll give it a nice, good red color. How do I give it a background? Oh, here we go. Fortunately, since I read ahead, I can at least give you guys ahead of time for part 2 for this trigger warning sign. It's about kind of like abuse, physical abuse and stuff. So just trigger warning, put that up for this part. But it's also very, well, I guess it's always sad when there's physical abuse and stuff. But then there's a very heartwarming story. Not warming, I guess. It's a very character building, defining. I'm trying to fumble the word. There is a very good backstory for Mrs. McGillicuddy. If this doesn't, trigger anything for you. Anyways, part 2. Now, just a month ago, Carolyn rose and tiptoed between sleeping bodies to Mrs. McGillicuddy's Mrs. McGillicuddy's sanctum sanctuum. Some yellow sauce bubbled gently on the stove next to the ingredients: cream, egg, butter. Mrs. McGillicuddy stood before her encyclopedic spice rack, tapping her cheek with her finger, considering. I'm out of the fresh ones, she said apologetically, waggling her little plastic lemon. Carolyn smiled. Mrs. McGillicuddy was a gentle soul. All she really wanted out of life was to be feeding someone. She was really good at it. Breakfast turned out to be something called Eggs Benedict. Carolyn, normally indifferent to food, and had 2 helpings. When she could eat no more, she waddled off to clean herself up. Coming out of the bathroom, she saw Peter's eyes wide open, watching her. Silently, she held one finger at a particular angle at her chest. The angle corresponded with the height of the sun. Height that the sun would be in the sky around 10 a.m. That was when Peter would meet with her and Michael at the Bull. According to Rachel's ghost children, Nobunanga would arrive sometime today. He would meet with all of them eventually, but Carolyn had arranged that she, Michael, Peter, and Alicia would have a private word first. Peter nodded silently, understanding. Alicia wasn't awake yet, but Peter would pass the word along. When she got back to the kitchen, Jennifer was at the table. In front of her sat a steaming mug of black coffee. Good morning, Jennifer said in Palapi. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Her smile was warm and genuine, but even though they had their privacy, she did not show Jennifer the sign she had exchanged with Peter. She liked Jennifer well enough, but at the meeting with Nobunanga, they would discuss matter of life and death. In Carolyn's estimation, Jennifer had drowned in her smoke and her fears a long time ago. She is of no use. Mrs. McGillicuddy looked over her shoulder at Carolyn. Could you ask your friend if she's hungry? She'll have some. Then to Jennifer, I hope you're hungry. Jennifer groaned. I'm still recovering from dinner. Is it really good? Carolyn gave her a grave nod. It's ridiculous. I don't know how she does it. With real glee, Mrs. McGillicuddy stirred a pot of simmering water and cracked an egg into the vortex. Jennifer sighed. Okay, fine. She'd opened up a little leather pouch. She kept her drugs and sighed. It's almost empty. I don't suppose you thought to... Yeah, Carolyn said. Matter of fact, I did. Jennifer grinned. My hero. Carolyn went to her bag, pulled out a foil-wrapped brick about the size of a paperback. She tossed it to Jennifer. There you go, Smokey. Jennifer turned the brick over in her hand, eyeing it doubtfully. What's this? It's called hashish. Carolyn said. I think you will like it. It's the same stuff you usually get, but more concentrated or something. Jennifer unwrapped the brick, sniffed it, pinched off a piece. She crumbled it into the pipe and lit it. A moment later, whoa, you like? She nodded. Smoke trickled out of her nostrils. She coughed a little, then blew it out. Then blew out the smoke with a satisfying sigh. My hero, she said again. She took another puff, then offered the pipe to Carolyn. No thanks, she said. A bit early for me. Suit yourself. She took one last puff, then stashed the gear in her pouch. They sat in silence for a while and watched Mrs. McGillicuddy cook. The poor woman, Jennifer said in Palapi. She was shaking her head. How do you mean? She has a heart cold. It's very distinct. She has a what? Jennifer gave her a quizzical look. I thought you spoke all languages. I do, and I don't, Caroline said. I mean, I understand the words you use, but they don't mean a lot to me. I'm guessing this is a technical term? Something from your catalog? Then she hurriedly, I'm not asking you to explain. Talking about your catalog was the one thing truly and enthusiastically forbidden to them. Father never said why exactly, but he was very serious about it. The general thinking was that he didn't want any one of them growing too powerful. But after what happened to David, no one ever dared to ask. It's okay, Jennifer said. The rules are a little different for me. I can talk about the medical conditions, about their symptom, diagnosis, likely outcome, anything a patient might have legitimate interest in. I just can't go into any kind of technical details about treatment. Oh, I didn't know that. She and Jennifer didn't talk much. Hadn't in years. So it's what? A bad valve or something? No, nothing physical. Heart coal. Heart, heart. Coal, Coal, for the listening readers, just in case I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Heart coal is just a term for this syndrome. Awfully flowery. Jennifer shrugged. Father has a poetic streak. Carolyn stared at her. If you say so. So what's wrong with her? Jennifer pursed her lips, searching for the right words. She makes brownies. Brownies? You mean brownies? Right, Jennifer said. That. You do understand. No, Jennifer. I'm sorry. I'm not following you at all. Jennifer's face fell. She makes brownies, she said. She doesn't eat them herself, but she makes them anyways. She does it every few days. I still don't. Sometimes she sings when she does it, Jennifer said. That's how I know. It doesn't have to be words. Hearing someone sing, even just hum, can tell me everything. About what? Carolyn asked, utterly lost. Her pathology, Jennifer said. The brownies aren't for her. They're for someone she lost a long time ago. Her husband? Mrs. McGillicuddy's husband was a couple of years dead. No, Jennifer said, not him. He spent most of their marriage at work. That was what defined him. And he had other women. Once, she tried to talk to him about it, and he beat her for it. Lovely. Mrs. McGillicuddy bustled in the kitchen, her eyes far away. But there was a child once. She doesn't even know it herself, but the brownies are for him. What happened? The boy likes getting fucked in the ass, Jennifer said. This made his father very angry. One day, the two of them came home and found him doing it on the couch. It was an older man, one of his father's friends. She wouldn't have minded, not much, but it made the boy's father crazy. He beat the child rather badly, broke his left tibia and the mandibles in 2 pieces. He was in the hospital for a long time, but the bones eventually healed. The damage to his spirit was catastrophic, though. The boy and his father had been close. When he was younger, the beating broke him. He started taking drugs, amphetamines, mostly, but anything he could get his hands on. He withdrew. He stayed away for days at a time. Then one day, he didn't come home. They spoke to him once or twice after that. Jennifer pointed at the thing on the wall. It's called a telephone, Carolyn said. She had gotten Minor to explain about telephones before she killed them the first time. Right, that. They spoke twice on the telephone, and once there was a note. He was in a place called Denver, then another one called Miami. Then didn't get any more phone calls. That was 10 years ago. Where is he? Jennifer shook her head. Dead? Probably. No one really knows. At first, this was agony for her. Every phone call, every knock on the door ripped open the wound. She laid awake every night for years. Her husband recovered, moved on, forgot. He was a man who never felt anything very deeply, just as Mrs. McGillicuddy's own father was. But Eunice cannot move on. She lied alone in the dark and waited for her little boy to come home. The waiting is all she has now. Carolyn looked at the sad woman bustling about in her kitchen and felt something stirred inside herself. It was compassion, though she did not recognize it as such. It was not something she felt often. Oh, she said softly. I see. She thinks that if her son were to come home now, it would be like waking from a dream. She would feel again, but the boy will not come home. And though she will not allow herself to know it, she knows it anyways. And so she makes brownies in the memories of her baby. She can't help herself. Faint comfort is better than no comfort at all, you see. Her world is very cold. And this thing she warms herself over, and the thing that she warms herself over with. Jennifer looked at the old woman cooking eggs in the kitchen and smiled sadly. It is a heart coal. We could do something, Carolyn said, her right index finger trembling in the tiniest bit. Rachel could find her son, even if he's dead. You could. Jennifer looked at her, surprised. That's kind of you, Carolyn. She shook her head. It wouldn't help, though. It never works out the way you would think. The problem with the heart coal is that the memory always diverges from the actual thing. She remembers an idealized version of her son. She's forgotten that he was selfish, that he enjoyed giving little offenses. It wasn't really an accident that they saw him with the other man fucking on the couch. If he came back now, it wouldn't help. He would have been gone again soon enough. Only this time, she would no longer have a comfortable comfort of the illusion. Probably that would destroy her. She wasn't strong. What then? Is there anything that can be done? Jennifer shook her head. No, not for this. She will either find a way to let the boy go, or he will die of the memory. I see. After that, they sat in silence. Jennifer drank her coffee and asked for seconds. Carolyn sipped her lemon soda. The others were waking up, drifting in. Carolyn translated breakfast orders between them and Mrs. McGillicuddy, relayed thanks, and helped wash things when it seemed appropriate. Then she announced that she was going for a walk to slip into the woods, headed west towards the bull. As Carolyn walked, she felt the coal of her own heart acutely. She wondered if she had ever hummed or sang around Jennifer. Certainly, she wouldn't have done so in the last 10 years, not since the plan began to come together. But before that, she just couldn't remember. If Jennifer knew, she gave no signs, but she turned it over in her mind for a little while, then put the question aside. Jennifer might know, or she might not, or she might suspect, or she might not. It didn't matter. It was far too late to turn back now. End of part 2. So, for those who are coming back that missed part 2, let me at least try to summarize it. Yeah. It was about Mrs. McGillicuddy and what Jennifer describes as a heart coal. So HEART, heart, the one that pumps, and a coal, COAL, like the ones you cook in barbecue. So it's like a simmering, like an ember, I would describe, a heart ember. She cooks for her estranged son that never calls because her husband physically abused, no, well, disagree with his lifestyle. And they describe heart coal because she yearns to connect with her son again, but then only remembers the good, idealized version of him. So if they ever were to meet again, she it probably won't end in a way that he'll stay forever. He'll just move on and do something else. And that's why they describe it as a heart coal, because like she has fond memories and still cooks fondly and lays awake, I think, thinking of her estranged son now to come home. But there is no solution for this. But yeah, now the main character, Jennifer and Carolyn, sees Mrs. McGillicuddy in a different light. A bit sad, but then also still, I guess I would say, like, kind of happy to have her and stuff. And they'll probably, like, I would say, eat now with more enthusiasm. But we'll see. Anyways, let's enter part 3 because we have a lot to go through. An hour later, she stood at the ridge of the clearing, overlooking Highway 78. On the far side of the road below, the weathered wooden Garrison Oak sign creaked in the wind. It was ostentatious in the way of a real estate sign, but now the raised wooden letters were silvery and cracked with age. Perfect, really. Among his other skills, father was very good at camouflage. He was she was a bit early, so she stopped to collect her thoughts. The brown the brazen the bronze bull loomed behind her, shiny, clean, and horrible. Not quite out of sight behind the trees. That was where they were to meet. But she didn't want to be near it for any longer than she had to. She was thinking about Nobunaga. It was crucial that this informal meeting goes well. And she was trying to think of things she might do to ingratiate herself with this noble guest. Ideally, she would like to have brought along Steve's heart, currently marinating in a Ziploc bag, into Mrs. McGillicuddy's vegetable crisper. But of course, this would tip David off the things that were taking place behind his back. Beyond that, she couldn't think of much. She and Nobunaga had never met. She didn't know much about him, other than what what she heard from Michael. Apparently, he he apparently had an appetite for raw meat, and did many of father's ministers. There was a bit about Thunder of the East, of course, but that was a long time ago. A very long time, actually. Unlike most of Father's early allies, Nobunaga had never fallen from favor, never been stripped of his rank. He would be loyal, then unshakably so. Of course, there was more to it than that. Supposedly, he and Father were friends as well, which was strange to think of, but Michael loved him without reservation. So probably he was a decent sort, and he was reputed to be clever. Possibly we can. Far from her, from the deep of the forest came the sound crackling wood. Caroline tilted her head, suddenly alert. That sounded big. She remembered enough from her times with Aisha and Aisha to be certain that this was not a falling tree. No, this was a branch cracking under the foot of something very large instead. By the sound, Barry O'Shea maybe? Surely it's too soon for. She twisted her she twisted on the rock to get a better angle, then let her eyes unfocus. She put all herself into the act of listening. On the road below, a car passed by, pleasantly distant. Not far off, a whippoorwill called out something that she couldn't quite understand for a moment. It sounded urgent. Michael would know. Crack. This time it was closer. She hopped down off the boulder, suddenly wary. Aisha and Aisha had lived in fear of bears. She had never seen one, but Michael agreed that there were a few around, a few unnatural creatures as well. Su- Sunomorphs? Nomivores? Nomivores and the likes. There weren't any there weren't any danger when father was nearby, but now, time to go, I think. Even so, she wasn't especially worried. Anything unnatural would smell of the library on her and be afraid. But the worst possibility was a hungry bear. And after a week, she hadn't. After the week, she had it. She couldn't quite manage to be afraid of something like that. Another crack. The whippoorwill screamed again. The rabbit darted out from underneath underbrush, panicky, headed to the bluff. Whatever it is, it's definitely coming my way. She sighed and set out towards the bull at a trot. She moved with all the craft Aisha had taught her, and more she had learned on her own. She was very quick. She made absolutely no sound. She still wasn't especially worried. The bull had a presence of several the bull had a presence on several planes, other than the physical. Animals sense this more than humans, and it made them uncomfortable. No natural beast would approach it. If she got within a stone's throw, she would be safe. Off to her side, she held a rust. Off to her side, she heard a rustling, slight but unmistakable. Is that? Is it stalking me? Surely not. Then 100 yards away, half hidden behind a stand of crocus, she saw what was hunting her. A tiger? Really? In Virginia? Their eyes met. The tiger nudged aside the spiky leaves of a datra stem that had broken up the lines of his face. He allowed a brief look at the whole of him, orange fur, black stripes, white underbelly, then set out towards her. He trotted, hypnotically graceful, green eyes flickering here and there. His nostril flared. 3 feet of tail swooshed gently in his wake. Her instinct was to skid to a stop and run the other way as fast as possible. Instead, she turned towards it and sped up a little. Involuntarily, as the adrenaline hit, she drew the obsidian knife from the sheath in the small of her back. Now she did scream, but it was a war crime. War crime. But it was a war cry, not panic. A low and brutal human sound. The tiger's eye widened ever so slightly. Then, suddenly, she was gone from sight. In a single bound, she broke left, hidden behind the thick pine. She could no longer see. She could no longer see it, and more importantly, it could no. It could not see her. She launched herself at a second smaller pine. She hit in a good 5 feet off the ground, wrapped her legs around it, then her arms. She began to shimmy up. The bark was rough against her chest, her belly, her thighs. It crumbled into her eyes as she climbed. A few seconds later, she chanced to look down and was surprised to see that she was almost 30 feet up in the air. The ground below was empty. For a moment, she entertained the thought that she had imagined the whole thing, that it was, nope, she thought, that's a tiger, sure enough. It saddled out from behind the thick pines, languid. Even listening closely, she could hear no sound. It must have been toying with me earlier, she thought, making little sounds, cracking branches to see what I would do. It must have been. The tiger looked up at her and roared. Carolyn fought the urge to wet herself. She moved 2 more feet up into the tree, as high as she dared. The trunk was getting thinner here. She was concerned that her weight might. The tiger sat back on his hunches. It lifted one massive paw, inspecting it, gave it a lick. The moment later, Michael stepped into view. Carolyn, he said. His speech was stilted, halting, the way it was when he had been conversing with animals. Why are you in the tree? She squeezed her eyes shut and gritted her teeth. Hello, Michael, she said. I'm just out for some fresh air and exercise. I thought it might be fun to climb a tree. How are you today? I am well, Michael said, clearly confused by the anger in her voice. You should come down, Carolyn. You look silly. Yes, I don't doubt that I do. She began to inch her way down the tree. When her feet touched the earth, Michael and the tiger watched her for a moment. Michael nodded at the ground. She looked blankly at him, not understanding. He pointed to the ground again, then patted his belly. Oh, Carolyn thought, right. She laid on her back and showed her belly to the tiger. He nuzzled her, taking a sniff here and there. When that was done, Carolyn stood. Our Lord Nobunaga honors us with his visit, she said. Michael translate, surprisingly deep rumbles booming from his small chest. Then, as an aside to Michael, you might have told me he was a fucking tiger, Michael. Michael blinked at her. His expression was blank, guileless. In what a moment she could have strangled him with a smile as she did it. You didn't know? I thought everyone knew. End of chapter 3. Nobunaga, giant tiger, yay! Sorry. Okay. Still chapter 3, part. Oh man, I should really update these texts. Part 4. With Nobunaga's blessing, Carolyn backtracked a little to meet Peter and Alicia. She wanted to give them a little bit of warning about Nobunaga, spare them from the sort of fright she had. Everyone was on edge already. She intercepted them at the bluff, half a mile or so back, walking together. That was a surprise. What did you tell David? She asked. Peter's catalog was mathematics. Alicia explored the permutations of the future. I should remember that. She could think of no business that might possibly have required both of them to go out together. They exchanged a glance. Well, Peter began, then trailed off. He was blushing. Alicia took his hands, laced her fingers through his. We've been taking little walks together every so often for a while now, Carolyn. she said dryly. No one thought much of it today. I just sort of assumed that you knew. Why do you take... Oh, I, oh, I see. Carolyn rubbed her forehead. Sorry, the evidence is mounting that I need to be a bit more observant. But never mind that. Nobunanga is here. He's... where? Carolyn pointed down Highway 78. Nobunanga was padding down the eastbound lane. A car zipped by in the other direction. The driver, Carolyn saw, was yawning. Father had done something to make sure that neighborhoods never seemed very interested to American. Make sure that the neighborhood never seemed very interested to Americans. But no one was quite sure what. That's him, Alicia said. He's a tiger? Oh, sorry, guys, Carolyn said brightly. I just sort of assumed that everyone knew. Yeah, that's him. Quite the specimen, isn't he? I don't think I ever seen a tiger up close before, Peter said. You have, Carolyn said. Me too, actually. There was one at the feast when I got back from my summer away. Her summer with Aisha and Aisha. That almost had to have been him. But I left early. If we were introduced, I don't remember it. Oh, right, Peter said. I remember now. That's who Michael has been apprenticing with? Alicia said, I thought Nobunanga was, a guy. She watched him, walked for a moment. Wow. Not only Nobunanga, I think, Carolyn said. Every time I talk to Michael, he's back from somewhere different. Africa, China, Australia. But Nobunanga always makes the introduction. He's well regarded. Fierce looking fella, isn't he? Caroline nodded. Yeah, really, you have no idea. She paused, then almost idly. I wonder if it might have been him. What do you mean? Carolyn rubbed her temple. I hate to admit it, but David has a point. Father has never been away this long. She gave them a long, level look. It's conceivable that something has happened to him. Something bad. Fatal, even. You don't seriously think... I'm just saying maybe. Her fingertips trembled again. She pressed them into her palms. But I think you'll agree that the pool of creatures who might be violent to Father is relatively small. Off the top of my head, I could think of only 3. David, the Duke, and Nobunanga. There might be others, Alicia said. Some of the ones that we don't see much. Ch.3 North, maybe? But she was looking at Nobunanga thoughtfully. Thoughtful. Is he the one with the tentacles? No, that's Barry O'Shea. Ch.3 North is sort of iceberg with legs. Remember? Up in Norway? Iceberg with legs. Pokemon? Well, anyways. Oh, right. I still think it had to be David, Peter said. You remember what? I remember, Carolyn said. On balance, I think I agree with you. It almost had to be David. That's why I suggest that we meet. If David has moved against Father, he must have some sort of plan for dealing with Nobunanga as well. Nobunanga needs to be made aware of that. He could be walking into a trap. Nobunaga's old, Alicia said. Some say 60,000 years. Some say a lot more. I myself not quite 30. Carolyn, in her eyes, were barely children. Are you sure he needs advice from us? Oh, wait. In his eyes, we're barely children. Ugh. Are you sure he needs advice from us? Father was old too, Carolyn said. Where is he now? She waited, but no one had an answer for that. Come on, she said finally. We don't want to be late. They set out towards the bull. Following along the edge of the bluff, all 3 of them watched Nobunanga as they walked, fascinated. He had walked down the steps across the road. He was standing in front of the Garrison Oaks sign. A pickup truck zipped by on Highway 78. The dogs in the back gave a couple of bewildered barks, but the driver didn't seem to notice. Nobunaga paced back and forth in front of the sign. Once, twice, 3 times. Peter was enchanted by the sight of him. Alicia had to pull him back from walking off the cliff of the bluff. When they were about 200 yards away, Nobunaga roared, called out to Michael. Michael scrambled down the steps, across the street, attend his master. They spoke to each other for a time. Deep growls. Then Caroline couldn't quite hear and gestured. Then Nobunaga rubbed his shoulder against Michael's chest. Michael flailed about, wild, obviously upset. The tiger let him carry for a moment and roared. Michael was silent. He walked across the road and squatted down the lowest steps of the bull, head in hand, dejected. I wonder what that was about. Nobunaga turned his back to the highway, faced Garrison Oaks, and set one massive paw on the road that led to the library. Slowly and deliberately, he began to walk forward. Wait. What's he doing? What does it look like? Alicia said. He's going to look for father. But, Peter said, if the whatever it is... Yes, Carolyn said. There is that. She called out to Michael. Michael, did you tell him about... Be quiet, Carolyn. Michael screamed. Carolyn was a little alarmed to see that he was crying. Be quiet. He has to concentrate. Carolyn nodded. More grimly this time. He's doing it. He's going to look for father. The sign at the entrance is the subdivision marked the boundary of barrier keeping from the library. A step or two past the sign and you'll be feeling the effects of headache, numbness, shortness of breath, sweating, whatever. It was different for everybody. Everybody affected by it, at least. Not everybody was. What? Sorry, let me read that again. A step or two past the sign and you begin to feel the effects. Headache, numbness, shortness of breath, sweating, whatever. It was different for everybody. Everybody affected by it, at least. Not everyone was. The others held their collective breath, waiting to see whether Nobunaga would be immune. Carolyn, fingertip trembling under the weight of her lies, pretended to hold her as well. Nobunaga walked past the sign slowly, with no obvious symptoms of distress. He's really doing it, Alicia said, awed. When she tried, she had made it 2 steps past the sign, and there her eyeballs began to bleed. She turned back after that and thought Jennifer had stopped the bleeding. She hadn't really seen well for days. David made it the furthest, 8 steps. Then he turned back, blood streaming from his ears, eyes, nose. He hadn't screamed. It took a lot to make David scream. But at the furthest point, just before turning back, he had a little moan. It's suffering animal noise. With 4 long strides, Nobunaga walked past the point that had stopped David. It doesn't seem to affect him, Peter said. Possibly not, Carolyn said. It was about 3 blocks from the great gateway to the entrance to the library. Nobunaga made his way down the first block without showing any signs of distress. He stopped at the first intersection and looked back over his shoulders at Michael. This is Reichsak Ariel, the tiger called out. He spoke not in the language of tigers, but in the common language of Palapi. His voice was a low growling, but perfectly understandable. I understand it now. It is the will of the Ablaka that I hunt the token and destroy it. If I am able, he can talk, Peter said. What's Reichsak Ayaral? Said Elisa. It means the denial that shreds. Carolyn said, Shh, I want to watch. Nobunaga took another step. He is immune, Alicia said. hopes raising in her voice. I knew it. It looked like we're going to go home after. Look, Carolyn said. 3 steps past the stop sign marking the first intersection. Nobunaga paused. He lifted one massive paw. Carolyn, whose vision was very good, saw that he was trembling. Nobunaga turned again to Michael. Now tears of blood dripping from his green eyes ran down his muzzle. No, Michael screamed, then said something in the language of tiger. He set off running. Michael! Carolyn screamed in her turn. No! She watched, transfixed with dread. As Michael sprinted towards Garrison Oak, she had thought she was ready for what to come next, the thing she had to do. But not Michael. Not yet. She set off after him. She was quick. Carolyn was quicker than any of them except David, but Michael was far ahead. She screamed down the steep bluff. She scrambled down the steep bluff, almost falling, but by the time she reached the asphalt, Michael was across the road. No! Michael covered the 20 feet or so between the road and Garrison Oaks sign too fast for Carolyn to intercept. Momentum carried him another 8 feet or so beyond that. No! Then he felt as if he had been shot in the brain. He lay very still. Michael! Carolyn screamed again, real anguish in her voice. She flashed on the day he had come back from the ocean to visit her. His skinny arms golden tan, the salt smell on his skin. The gold BMW bore down on her. Coming fast, horn wailing, she shrieked back at it, teeth bared, ape-like. The driver swerved onto the shoulder, not quite losing control, then sped off in a spray of gravel. She covered the 100 feet between her and Michael in a matter of seconds, sprinted past the boundary, and precisely as Michael has done. She hoped anyways. Fell flat on her face on the concrete, but where Michael only lay still, Carolyn rose up. She lifted herself on to her elbows and her knees. Her nose was broken. Blood streamed down her face from gashes on her nose and cheek. She crawled one step forward, then another. Her motion was sporadic, halting, as her nerves were no longer firing properly. She thought it was a good performance. Her twitches were indistinguishable from the real thing, and had the side benefits of camouflage of complete genuine tremble in her fingertips. A third step, 2 more, and Michael's ankles was in reach. She grabbed him by the ankles, then vomited up blood of lemon soda and eggs. When she had a good grip, she turned and began moving back towards the main road, dragging Michael after her. Inch by inch, she muscled the two of them to safety. Just outside the iron gate, right where the effect stopped, she flopped on her belly, exhausted. A moment later, Peter and Alicia approached, slow and cautious. Are you okay? Alicia asked. Carolyn rolled over her belly, a dry heave a couple of times. Her face was covered in blood. I will be, I think, she said. Michael? Michael coughed, gagged. Turn him to the side so he doesn't choke, they said. They did. Not said. Michael coughed some more, spat out blood. We need to get him to Jennifer, Carolyn said. She wiped blood from her eyes with one trembling finger. What about Nobunaga? Where's Peter? Looking off in the distance, was shaking his head. He made it about a block and a half before he fell over. He's lying on his side for a while. His chest was heaving, but he glanced down at Carolyn. Not anymore. Carolyn squeezed her eyes shut. Ebnal Shamota, she said in Arabic. Then, fuck, Nike, Mode, poopy goddamn caca. She rolled over on her side and pushed herself to a sitting position. She squinted down the block and saw that Peter was right. not so much as a twitch. She suppressed a chilly little smile. Even if I could get it that deep, which I don't think I can. He's too heavy for me, she said. I couldn't move him, not alone. Peter looking at her with something between admiration and horror. Is there a word that means brave and stupid at the same time? There is, she said. Lots of them. A little irked by Peter's implied jab. She considered explaining how the American word wussy might be applied to him. She didn't, though. It would have been counterproductive. Instead, she crawled over to Michael, checked his pulse and her fingertips. With her fingertips. At her touch, his eyelids fluttered. Carolyn? Carolyn, where's... He reads the answer from her eyes, then moaned. His mouth worked, but nothing came out. He grieved. His grief was too deep for words. Shh, she said, stroking his hair. Shh, Michael. Shh. It was all she could think to say. End of part 4. You know, there's always... I know Nobunaga is like a mythical creature person thing, right? A deity sort of, I guess, almost. But it's just something like, so emotional when hearing of animal suffering. And part 5. An hour or so later, it became clear Michael was going to be okay, physically at any rate. His heart was broken. He wept the guileless, unaffected tears of a small child. Carolyn wanted to get somewhere a little less exposed. Being by the road made her nervous. So together they helped Michael climb the steps that led to the clearing of the bull. But instead of making to the bull itself, they went into the woods that was Michael's true home. Not far away, a stream flowed over the small cliff, burbling pleasantly. Carolyn remembers the spot from her summer with Aisha and Aisha. Better still, you couldn't see the neighborhood from here. Couldn't see Nobunaga's body. The 3 of them helped Michael to it. He couldn't quite walk under his own power. There they laid down by the stream to rest. Perhaps misunderstanding, Peter and Alicia left the 2 of them alone. Carolyn and Michael were not lovers. They had tried to be once, when they were, in their early 20s? That was about a decade ago, though it seemed longer. She thought that night must have been her idea, though she couldn't imagine what she might have been thinking. She had never had any real interest in sex that she could remember, certainly not after the thing with David. He had one night Had that one night been had that one night been some symptom of her desperation, or maybe simple loneliness? She didn't know. One night, when the others were away, she seduced him, sort of, or at least tried to. It ended badly, for reasons she never completely understood. Michael was unable to perform. He wanted to. She could tell that from the way he kissed her, the hungry way he pawed at her once he understood what she was about. No matter what she did, his penis stayed limp in her hands, even her mouth. After a while, awkward times of trying, Michael pushed her away very gently. That night, they slept by the same fire, but did not touch. She woke in the night and heard him crying out in his sleep. He left before dawn the next day, after she saw him less and less. They were still friendly, though, if not precisely close. They bore each other no grudge and protected each other when they could. Among the Palapi, that counted for a lot. Carolyn held him in his lap, although that Carolyn held him in her lap all through that autumn afternoon, saying things like, "I'm very sorry, and I know the two of you were friends." The words felt like ashes in her mouth. She knew every word that had ever been spoken, but she could think of nothing to say that might ease his grief. All she could do was wipe away his tears with the tip of her fingers. Shortly before sunset, Michael rose. He washed his face in the creek, stood, called out to Peter and Alicia. They came a few minutes later. Both of them were flushed, and Alicia's robe was inside out. Nobunaga said something before he left. Michael was something childlike, but he was not weak. His voice has grown calm, controlled, despite his grief. "You all need to hear this." "We're sorry, Michael," Alicia began and reached out to him. He waved her away. All you know that all of you know that Nobunaga was more than he appears, yes? He is ancient. He is wise. He told me that he understood what was going on here. He said that father would not let no harm come to him. He seemed now that he was wrong about that part. He gestured back at the neighborhood. But even so, we would be foolish to discount his other thoughts. What did he say? He knew what it was, Michael said. The thing keeping us out. He has seen such before. They were used in the Third Age. They're called Reichsak Ariel. Yeah, we heard him say that. What is it? It means the denial that shreds, Caroline said. Yeah, Carolyn, Peter said. But what is it? Carolyn shrugged, thinking of heart-cold, poetic license. I know, Alicia said. You do? Yeah. I wasn't going to say anything. It's part of my catalog. Carolyn's catalog was the far future. What? Did I say Carolyn? Alicia's catalog was the far future. Yeah, Alicia's. Well, then don't, Peter began. She put her hand on his arm. It's okay, really. This Reichstag is happening today. What do you know about it? Carolyn said. That you can tell us, I mean. Well, Alicia considered. Not much in terms of technical details. I can't make one, but I know it's sort of a perimeter defense mechanism. Basically, it's a sphere anchored in a plane of regret. There's some sort of token associated to it. Token? Peter said. Like what? It could be anything. The token needs to be an actual physical object, but all it really is an anchor. The closer you are to the token, the more powerful the effects are. That fits, Carolyn said. Her voice was meditative. Wait, it gets better. There's also a trigger. I don't understand. It's something a person that brings the Rysak Ariel into focus. Like what? The trigger would be something internal, an emotion, an experience, a memory. Alicia struggled. Something like that. The people who shared it feel the effect of the Rysak Ariel. For everyone else, it's like it doesn't exist. Peter considered. That fits too, he said. Who among us would know how to make such a thing? Carolyn said. asked. David? No, no, not David. The Rysack has a defense application, obviously, but it's not like a spear or something. It's pretty complex. Carolyn gave her a suspicious look. You say in the future, these things are pretty common? Are they maybe for sale or something? If you wanted one, how hard would would it have to be? It wasn't me, Alicia said. And no, you have to alter the shape of the space-time locally, space and time. It's very customized. You can't just pick one up at the market, even in the future. Caroline continued to look at her. Come on, Carolyn, Peter said. We know it's not. Yeah, okay, Caroline said. I guess I'm inclined to believe you. When the barrier, the Rysack Arial, first came up, they all they had all tested themselves against it. Alicia came away with a massive internal hemorrhaging. It wasn't immediately obvious, but within a day or so, she was one big bruise. She stayed that way for weeks. Whenever the trigger was, it worked on her. If not David, who then? Peter asked. Alicia gave him a sympathetic look. I hate to say it, dear, but the likeliness, the likeliest, what? The likeliest candidate is, well, you. Me? Alicia came on. You know what? You know that. Alicia held up her hands. I know this. Carolyn and Michael may not. She turned to them. The Rysack is mostly a mathematical construct. As such, it will be part of Peter's catalog. Sorry, dear. Guys, I've never even heard of such a thing, Peter said. You can either believe me or not, but it's all right, Caroline said, holding up her hand. I remember, I believe you. I believe you. On the day of the Rysack was the first set, the day that Father disappeared. Peter made 2 steps beyond the sign and began to smoke. By the time he came back, his skin was already blistering. Who then? Peter asked. I'm not sure, Carolyn said, but I have an idea. This trigger you were talking about, is there a way to, what is it? None that I know. None that I know of. Why? Well, Carolyn said, it occurred to me that the dead ones still get packages delivered most days. Almost, there's always somebody driving in to deliver those big round cheese bread things that David's fond of. Pizza? Peter said. I like that too. It's a good point. If the Rysack worked on Americans, there'd be a pile of them dead in the streets by now. Yeah, Carolyn said. That crossed my mind as well. You said that the token could be anything, but the field of effect is a sphere. If that's the case, then we can just map the outline of the effect and we'll pretty much know where the token is, right? Peter was grinning. And if we know where it is, if we could find someone to move it, Alicia finished. She was grinning. Carolyn, you're a genius. Library, here we come. Yeah, well, it's a little early to start celebrating. Among the other things, we still need an American. Do you guys know anybody? They shook their head in unison. That's going to have to be on you, Carolyn. None of us even speaks the language. Yeah, she said. Okay, fair enough. I'll come up with something. Also, there are the Sentinels to think of. They plotted together until well after dark. Carolyn pretended to persist at first, but eventually she let them convince her that David will have to be involved as well. End of chapter 3. Oh. So there's a device that's blocking their home, and it kills them upon getting close. But they need to bring an American to sort of deactivate the device, I guess. Interesting stuff. We're going to enter interlude 2 after I take a break. So I might have a small separate video or let that carry into the next chapter. Let me just skim ahead and see if there also is a interlude. There is no interlude for the next chapter. So you know what? I might tack that on to the next time. But anyways, that was chapter 3. Mrs. McGillicuddy and their bonds with the kids was interesting. Got to know about Nobunaga and the device that blocks them from their home at the library. Anyways, thanks again for joining me. We'll start interlude 2 and chapter 4 next time.